Hello and welcome to BharatShakti.in. I'm Brigadier Chatterjee. We'll be talking about our neighborhood countries once again today. We've had this series going for some time, and you will have possibly viewed our serials on Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Indonesia, and a couple of other countries. Today it's Bhutan's turn, all the more because Bhutan's just had its elections. And to take us through this whole story of Bhutan, I have with me somebody who is amply qualified to do so, Major S. Jayashankar.
Thank you very much for
Welcome.
inviting me, sir.
Well, very kind of you to spare your time. We intend having a discussion on Bhutan. And the first things first, I would say, and that's they've just gone through an election, and well, they have a system of their own, which is quite peculiar to Bhutan. If you can amplify on the system as also the elections, how have they panned out?
The Bhutanese election system is a little different, having evolved from the unique position and the unique demography. It's a very small country with hardly 750,000 people in a country size of Switzerland. So it's not a small country by size, but small by population. So they evolved a system by which they discourage any kind of regionalism, communalism, any kind of coalition politics or any such thing. Therefore, they have gotten for a system a two-stage election to the lower house, where in the first level, the first stage, any number of parties can compete, but only the first two by number of seats won or percentage of vote share, they go to the next round, final round. So in the second round, which is held usually about 6 weeks after the first round, the two top parties compete for the 47 seats in the National Assembly, each fielding one person. So a total of 94 candidates are thus there, and election which were just declassified or the just result just came out, 30 have been won by the People's Democratic Party, and the balance for 17 have been won by the second party. The issue here is that there are just two parties, so there's no question of any coalition, and every party has to field a candidate from every constituency, and each Zongkak, which is their district or a province, what they call, the 20 Zongkaks in Bhutan. So every Zongkak has got between 2 to 3 seats, 47. So 2 seats would be 40, and some of the slightly more populous ones have got 3. So therefore, the geographical distribution of seats and not as per the population. Therefore, all portions of the country get adequate representation. There are a few other peculiarities in the sense that the ministers have to be graduates. The ministers, no more than 2 ministers can be from any one Zongkak, so that any one area, the western portion of Bhutan is a very more demographically and politically more influential area, so they do not garner an unfair share of the representation. Then also the prime minister cannot hold more than 2 terms in office. So the leader of the PDP, Mr. Tshering Tobgay, who most probably will be invited to become the prime minister, this is second term in office, so that will be his last term. He was there as prime minister between 2013 and 18, and every election since the first one 2008, a new party has come to power. So the first time PDP has got their second chance. And like I said, since they don't represent any narrow ideology or any narrow set of interests, any party, so there is not much to choose between the party. It's more about the personal stature and the qualifications and the reputation of the individual candidates to determine the outcome. It's a very good thing. There's no room for any sort of petty politicking over issues. So it's a very welcome step. And Mr. Tshering Tobgay, he's educated in India, studied in Darjeeling. He's educated in US, in Harvard, and he's done his MBA also there. And he's a good friend of India. He was there, as I said, between 2014 to 18. And I recall him receiving our Prime Minister in his first visit, which is first overseas visit, as always, to Bhutan. And he's a good friend of India, and we can look forward with optimism towards the future.
Definitely, we all are very optimistic. Bhutan's been one of those neighbors who's been with us, I would say, right through. But let's talk a little bit about Bhutanese geography. Geography has a huge influence on a country, the courses of action that they can possibly pursue. So, if you relate the geographical constraints and geographical advantages of Bhutan, it'll be fine.
It's very important because Bhutan has been a very isolated country. Bhutan is just like any other Himalayan state. It's sandwiched between Sikkim on the west and Arunachal Kameng sector on the east. So terrain towards the west is more like Sikkim. Terrain towards the east is more like Kameng. That is the western part Arunachal. Just like there are tall Himalayas, high Himalayas in the north, and from where the rivers flow down south, separating the river valleys. They all flow down south. And so these distinct river valleys, they nurtured their own kind of, individual subcultures, just like in Arunachal. And it's only now that there is a road running approximately in the middle of the country, from west to east, from Thimphu to Tashiangse. It's about 700 kilometers long, very tough road, and invariably though the road widening works are still going on, takes about 3 days to drive. uh, there are just two roads into Bhutan, one from either end of the country, one from Jaigaon, that is north of Siliguri, it goes into Bhutan. A place called Phuentsholing enters Bhutan, and similarly in Assam, north of Guwahati, it goes into Bhutan. SJ, the place called SJ Samdrup Jonkar, and it goes to Bhutan. These are just two axes entering Bhutan, either end. Primarily, it means that any east-west movement within Bhutan, it is far more convenient and saving of time to drive down to the plains of India, drive across India either east to west or west to east, and then get back into wherever you want to go. So this is a very long-standing and comfortable arrangement. Everybody is very comfortable with it. Bhutanese face no issues in transit, and there's no visa issue or any restrictions are there. And it's, as I said, people are happy with this arrangement. There is
Uh,
no, sir.
Go
Say-
ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. So there are not much of roads, to the north of the middle line. The Bhutan is about 300 kilometers or so north to south, and the primary reason is that the mountains are very high and there's hardly any habitation there, and there is no reason to build any road that side. So the opening up towards the north, I'll come across a bit about the history and development of Bhutan where it will be clearer. But then that's a geographical fact. So this entire orientation of Bhutan is to the south, historically and by geographically, and so it is just a natural thing. That's it.
Right, if you can just put us into the Bhutanese political thinking and political transitions as it has journeyed over the last couple of decades. How did democracy come to be practiced over there?
Certainly, sir. See, I will just make a couple of words at the initial portion. And see, the Bhutanese were living in individual river valleys, as I mentioned. In the middle of the 17th century, or early part of 17th century, there was a warrior monk called Jigme Namgyal who came. I mean, actually, he fled some persecution and monastery politics there, along with his followers. He entered Bhutan from the northwest, along with his followers. And he was, as I said, he was a warrior monk. He brought in, he managed to unify the tribes. He brought in a very distinct form of Bhutanese identity, distinct from the Tibetan, from where it was derived. He unified the whole administratively the whole area. He set up a system of dual administration between the religious and the temporal, who ruled side by side in a system called there was these zongs were there. Half the zong were with the monks, half were with the rulers, and so on. So and his followers continued with that, and he was such a strong figure that when he died, or uh, when he passed away, it was not revealed to the world for more than 50 years. His followers just told the world that, the Penlops or those monks told the world that he's in deep meditation, and technically he's still in deep meditation in Punaka zone, and only that room is accessed by the king and the Jekempo, which is the spiritual leader of Bhutan. And so that continued. And about 100 years later, when the British started coming and all the Battle of Plassey and all took place, after that, the British did not have much interest in the area because there was no economic interest, except to ensure that the tea gardens, which are in the plains, were safe. So they had some battles with the Jigme Namgyal, who was the strong leader at that time. And then, after some battles, they signed the Treaty of Sinchula in 1865, whereby the British got control of the Dwars. And in exchange, they agreed not to interfere in the internal politics of Bhutan, as also paid them an annual subsidy of 50,000 rupees in those days, to promote the use of British currency in these areas. So subsequently, the son of Jigme Namgyal, Ugyen Wangchuk, he became the hereditary king. The series of events took place in 1907. He was elected as the hereditary king by all the tribes of Bhutan, and he signed a treaty with the British in 1910, which is basically an updated version of Sincula Treaty. And we inherited the treaty. Why I mention treaty is that in 1949, after it became independent, India simply inherited the entire treaty. And of course, we increased the subsidy and the money given to them. And in a very grand gesture, gave up a large portion of the eastern Dwars, which the British had sort of vacated. And we recognize it actually belonged to Bhutan. And that is the Daranga Mela area, Devathang area, the SJ, what I mentioned. That area was returned to them, a gesture very highly appreciated by the Bhutanese. So we continued with this arrangement without any problem. And then basically in the 49 treaty, it was mentioned that as I said, inherited from the British, that the Bhutanese would be guided or would heed the advice of the Indian government in matters of foreign policy. So this was continued from 49. Then ultimately in 2007, just before Bhutan got into the democracy, we signed a revised treaty with them on mutual understanding, which is basically same thing, except that it was said that we will coordinate and we will not, they will not need to accept our guidance. But it's a question of mutual sovereignty and mutual security. So we'll be coordinating. And also some other measures like enhancing the subsidy, etc., were spoken of. So that was then signed by he was then the HRH, that is His Royal Highness, the current king. He was the crown prince at the time, though his father abdicated. So it was done before the democracy came in, and they had revised treaty when Dr. Manmohan Singh was also subsequently visited. That particular treaty was signed by Pranab Mukherjee. So that has been the guiding document between the two countries. And the Bhutanese people are very, very comfortable with us. Like I mentioned, the ruling class in Bhutan, that is the Nalops, or the dominant political class in Bhutan, Nalops are the people who came from Tibet, they are fundamentally Tibetan. So, and they also fought several wars with the Tibetan in their history before they achieved independence. So there is that fundamental enmity is there and fear of that, or you can say, some kind of a wariness of the Tibetans. And if they open up to the north, they are a small country, they can easily be swamped. And in the current situation, they can be swamped even faster, which they all understand and recognize. So that hesitation is there. I was there when demonetization took place, good relation between the Marwadi traders, the border, and them, and COVID response, everything, we are their brothers.
Right. Right. Let's go a little further into the relationship between Bhutan and India since the last couple of decades. Any markers, any major issues that you'd like to highlight?
Not really, sir. I mean, we have covered most of it right now, but I would just like to say that, like, before we went in for democracy, there was a lot of coordination into democracy. Like in 2006, we signed a document sorting out our own boundaries between the two countries, between India and Bhutan. The India-Bhutan boundary was agreed upon, marked on maps. One is 25,000 maps, and then the tri-junctions were left open because of the trilateral nature of the question. They were left open, and the border marking in the construction of border pillars also very much, almost I would say, largely complete, except for a few areas which are difficult. And so, that is another good step taken. And then we have been providing a lot of developmental aid to them. We have been supporting all their 5-year plans. Their 12th 5-year plan just finished in 2013. The 13th 5-year plan has just started. And I'm sure we will be fully, meeting all their aspirations. Our assistance in the 12th 5-year plan exceeded 4,500 crores. It's a lot of money. And now we have got a very nice mix of not just hydropower cooperation, where we will come to later, mix of hydropower, and also we call it high impact community development project, where we develop projects for the ordinary people, like, drinking water, schools, education, and such kind. Other assistance, like the currency is pegged to the Indian rupee. So 1:1 is pegged to Indian rupee. Their monetary policy is just a reflection of the RBI monetary policy. In effect, the stability of their currency is ensured by us. And the like all other project tied assistances are there. There are a whole lot of vacancies for education, skill development in our universities. The entire elite is generally educated. As we all know, the Bhutanese army officers, we all know them so very well.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
fact, I'd like to make one small mention. When I was posted to Bhutan in 2015, December, I drove up because I was posted in Tawang before that. So the previous commandant had left without relief. So when I reached there, the king's ADC, one then Brigadier Sangithinle, who used to be my senior in NDA, he was there to receive me with his wife, and we had some chana bhatura and chai together for 1 hour, and that was it. I was settled. Can you imagine such a thing in any other country? I mean, it was such a wonderful
Definitely.
thing. I still maintain very close contacts with them, and they and the establishment of the intra or the training team predates that. 62 we got established. Initially there wasn't even an RBA. There was no need. There was just the king's guard, just the palace guard were there. But once the situation in Bhutan, in Tibet, took a turn with the Chinese invading Tibet in 15, and then the Dalai Lama situation in 59, then there was a need felt to raise an army, and Indian Army agreed to provide training and other material assistance, and we set up a small training team there to guide and assist them. As you know, they're all trained in our institutions and hold our equipment. So that arrangement still continues. It's a very close relationship, and it's a model relationship, I would say. So
Uh, let's go a little further with this relationship issue. What's the relationship like between Indians and Bhutanese? I'm talking about on the street, the citizen of Bhutan. How much do they like us, or is there a undercurrent of dislike or something like disharmony? Let's say, how is it with the citizen of Bhutan?
um, so that's a very good question. Like I can give you one simple or one kind of answer. Like India is like the 30-year-old married wife who you're comfortable with. Everybody knows what she does, and China is like the a glamorous girlfriend, where a lot of promises there with no idea, or what some kind of glitter is there in the sky. Ki pata nahi, if you reach out to them, something will happen. So, but then they also understand that their ties are very close to us. They're dependent on us for everything, all foodstuffs, all fuel, LPG, every single thing come from India. And any trade they have to do with outside world also is through India. And there is no really reason to have any kind of a problem with us. And also said mention about the wariness they have the Chinese because of historical issues with the Tibetans firstly, and with the Chinese because of their treatment of the Buddhist monks there. And Bhutan is a highly religious country, as you know, so they are very worried about that. Uh, See, of late there has been, I mean, as long as Bhutan was completely closed and extremely rural, it was okay. But when Bhutan started opening up to the world, youth started traveling abroad, not just India, all over the world. They started seeing everything. Obviously, they got a little tempted, and they have ambitions, and they have aspirations for better life within their own country. And it's a very small market, so big FDI can't be expected. So there aren't very many opportunities, especially in the last COVID and post-COVID. The growth rate is just 1%, 1.7% to be exact. So that's nothing. So the 30% approximately of the youth are unemployed. That's a big figure. Almost one third is unemployed. So the Tshering Tobgay was come to par just now. He had come to par with a very comprehensive plan of how he's going to bring about an investment and job opportunity, job creation. That's why primarily he won, because he had a very concrete plan, whereas others had just given some, wishy-washy thing. So we have to deliver on that. So that is a point of concern that perhaps India could do more. And also there are there are like hydropower plants are there. There are some ICZ kind of small industries along the Indian border, where, as you can imagine, bulk of the technical labor, technical technicians, the skilled people are all Indians, due to experience, and due to also easier to control so many things. So they are very visible. They cross the border every day. They come into Bhutan and they work and they go back. Some of them stay put in camps, of course, but when they cross, everybody sees these people taking away our jobs. It's not that they are not taking away; they have competed with you, and I mean the employer found them fit. And another thing is the Bhutanese companies are very small. So if there is any contract like hydropower plant, it's a let us take. Suppose there is a subcontract for something, for some particular aspect of it, say access road or a some college or some transformer station or a substation. You can imagine the if L&T is competing or somebody else, some big guy is bringing bidding. So where is the chance these guys have got? So they will become subcontractors. So then they feel that in our own country we are subcontractors. There is no grudge or any such thing against the Indians. In fact, they like us, respect us. But of course, there's always a yearning for more. I wish we could get more. Like, for example, fuel there is about 20 rupees cheaper than India. Just to give an example. So the point, it's about 80 rupees there, 100 odd rupees here, because they don't pay excise duty. Because excise duty is not levied on, because it's sold outside the country, automatic excise duty is not. So that kind of thing is there. So there are no advantages and they recognize that. But then, like I said, they hope for more, wish for more, yearn for more.
Okay, let's talk about this hydropower. Being sold to India by Bhutan. That's about the biggest linkage, economic linkage that perhaps Bhutan has with us.
Correct.
Are we meeting their aspirations in as far as hydropower projects are concerned in terms of price that we pay per unit to them? Is there a possibility of finding more common ground, creating a better win-win situation, let's say?
Yes or no? Yes or no, because it is definitely the only source of foreign exchange they've got. And then the customer is just one customer to India. And at various points of time, documents signed by at the highest level have spoken glowingly of 20,000 megawatt, 30,000 megawatts and all. But on ground, so far, we have only done about 2,300, 2,400 megawatts. Okay. And another 2,200 megawatts are almost ready. So 4,500 megawatts is what is the total net size of the thing. So previously, we used to have a large, there eight component. I mean, 60-40 used to be the eight component. 68, 40, you had to raise funding. The which is okay. The only thing is if there's a delay, and the delays are due to various kind of issues, like the lack of agreement between the two parties. There's basically the company they're called Green Power. It's a government PSU type of thing, and the Indian side on technical issues, how to approach a problem, what is the best solution, on execution issues, on contractual issues. So everywhere there's a lot of disagreement, and then not disagreement, lack of, I would say, complete consensus. Which delays matters. Then things get delayed. Then also there's some natural issues like COVID and other, some geological fault turned up which was not anticipated, especially in Punasanchu. So this happened. So all these push up costs, and the costs for a small country are really exorbitant. I'll just give you figures. Like Punasanchu 1 was supposed to be completed by 2016 with the initial cost of 3,500 crores. And the costs are already now 9,300 crores and are not being completed still. That's a 3-time escalation. Mangdechu, which I told you was inaugurated by the Prime Minister, was supposed to be functional by 2020 with initial outlay of 3,300 crores, finally shot up to 5,400 crores. For a country like Bhutan, these are all huge sums, and it's a large part of their external debt. So then there are discussions of, it is one of the most indebted countries in the world, and all this debt in Bhutan is all external, unlike India, which has debt, but it's all within India. This is outside in Bhutan. So then there are talks of comparisons, like indebtedness and debt trap diplomacy and things like that, which is avoidable. So as I said, Mangdeshu was a good step where we reworked the terms and were able to give. And that single step boosted Bhutan's hydropower revenue with 30% straight away.
Okay.
And now the formula for arriving, like what you mentioned about the cost price of electricity, is also, there is a complicated formula based on the money invested, money owed, and all. So sometimes it is such that sometimes the cost being paid within India is higher than the cost being reimbursed to them. So for which they have an objection, and also the electricity not available throughout the year. In the lean season, like in Tala and Chuka and some of these other things, there's not enough water. So at that time, India sells electricity to them. So it's a net bill which goes. Like we import from them and export to them. So obviously there'll be net billing. So it looks like if you just look at it, the calculation that they sold so much to us, that's true. But we all just gave so much to you. What about that? But subtract that. So all that, like I said, it's a complicated thing, but um, we should be careful. But this is a very win-win for both sides because it gives a short supply and it is helping a neighbor. And in the long term, a lot of things can come up based on hydropower. People are realizing. And I must also mention that there was an issue of this CBT, if you remember, the cross-border trade electricity, which was also
Yeah.
the regulation was issued by the Ministry of Power, basically regarding Nepal and all. But that led to a lot of confusion here because there was a rule in that it can be imported and sold only if it is owned by the Indian company. That is, we have majority stake, 51%. But of course, we subsequently had an issue clarification that it doesn't apply to Bhutan and there's no change to Bhutan is concerned. But that created some consternation in Bhutan.
Right. Let me take you to China, Bhutan-China relations basically, and keep in view the Doklam incident also and all the junctions that you were talking about. So, how's the relationship now with all the threat that you explained from the north being always there, they being afraid of Tibetans, and now well, it's the Chinese. How's the relationship? How do you see it going forward?
Uh, I already explained the background to you. See, there is no base document with China. Like we have the McMahon line with the Chinese where we discuss. Within China, Bhutan and Tibet, or leave alone Bhutan and China, there is no base document to even start talking where the boundary is. So these are all by traditional, routes and traditional grazing grounds and traditional some sort of a rent paid for grazing and all. That was all that was there. Number one. Number two, the while I would say that the Chinese, especially in the Xi Jinping era, this carrot and stick has veered more towards stick and less of carrot. And the Chinese stance of constantly shifting claim by bringing new areas into equation, they have really, got the Bhutanese worried because there are two, three ways looking at it. Two ways essentially. One is that there is a problem in the west, which is toward Doklam side. There's a problem in the north. So, okay, the Chinese used to say, let's take it up as a package solution. We'll accommodate you in the north, you accommodate us in the west, which is, of course, not to our liking, to India's liking. Now they opened up east also, which is never in question. And they not only east, this area where they opened up is not even contiguous to China. It is areas much to south of the Tibetan border. By saying that is also, because that is in their own map, that is part of Arunachal Pradesh, which they claim. Therefore, that should also be part of their own claims, which creates. So when the package solutions are there being discussed, then obviously, I mean, it leads to, if you bring new areas into discussion, package solution is not acceptable. We would prefer the Bhutanese would like a sector by sector approach. But while I'll just earmark flag one or two important dates. In 1983 was the first time. Okay, firstly, the Chinese and the Bhutan don't have formal diplomatic relations, and it's got nothing to do with China. Bhutan does not have diplomatic relations with any P5 country and does not want also. It does not want to get into P5 politics. It's very happy with its India as a primary partner, and it's working very well. And all other P5 countries got no problem except China, which feels very upset that there is a neighbor which is not accepting our diplomatic outreach. So 84 onward they started discussing, and 88 that Sundarong Chu time, and you were also there in
Yeah,
yeah,
I was in
when we
Bangla.
signed the agreement of mutual principles that there should be respect, mutual respect, and they should accommodate each other and all that kind of thing. 10 years later, in 1998, they signed an agreement saying that there'll be status quo. As of today, there'll be status quo and there'll be no movement by either side to change the status quo till such time arrive at a conclusion of the boundary talks. So every action China has taken after that, to patrol, to build roads, to build infrastructure, to make even townships, are all in contravention to the 98 agreement. And then Bhutan every time highlights and protests that you're violating the 98 agreement. In 2012, there was a important development when we were discussing with China about in Sikkim boundary, that the tri-junction areas will not be decided bilaterally, neither between India and China or between Bhutan and China. Tri-junction area will be discussed trilaterally or in a separate forum. So any discussion will exclude tri-junction areas. So that is when we settled the thing. There also that 1895 agreement all came up. So that was left. So that is the state. So whatever discussions the Bhutanese are having with the Chinese now is only on bilateral areas, not on
Okay.
tri-junction areas, which is where Doklam also is. So there were in 2021, there was some consternation when the Bhutanese and Chinese signed an MOU saying that we want to expedite the boundary negotiation and settle it within 3 years, which caused some confusion, some thing here. But then later on, the foreign minister clarified that no, we still abide by the bilateral area. The areas in discussion are only bilateral and no tri-junction. Now, with the new prime minister and the new government in position, again, I suppose they will resume. But there is really no major change in the negotiation. The same 24 rounds were held and they remain there only. The with by the Chinese push, bringing in more of these areas into discussion and into on table and forcing roads and settlements in Bhutan, they are only upsetting the Bhutanese, and I don't think it will end up very well for them.
Right. We have a very fine relationship as you have defined it in detail. What do you really do to, let's say, keep this relationship firm, possibly make it even, closer? Any steps that you suggest in India-Bhutan relations?
Yes, sir. See, we have to tread carefully. Bhutan has a culture of its own, and they're very careful about their culture and maintaining their culture because they're small countries. They get swamped easily culturally if they open up. So we have to respect that, which we are doing so far. But it's not a country where there is a lot of lively, free debate on issues, and that's how they are. It's a monarchy recently become a democracy. So unlike us, what we might consider as a just a free debate by some Twitter people or bloggers, something like that. Such things are not there, and we have to be careful that they might misconstrue it as being the voice of establishment. You're seeing this whole Maldives thing also, how it has started off on some tweet.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So that we cannot afford that with Bhutan and small country. Secondly, the about the specific things. See, just keeping honoring their sentiments is the primary thing which we are doing, and even the I would say Indian tourists now are with all the new steps are being more careful, and we are the numbers have gone up slightly now, but there has been no complaint recently of any kind of basically the upset if some of our tourists might go and take some selfies in their some holy spot or some place like that and put it in their own personal page, and then that creates a poor impression. People have become more sensitive now on our side also, and many of these holiday people are all basically people from Siliguri and Darjeeling and those areas. They are not educatively aware people. They're just some people who come for some work and want to take a couple of days extra chutti and roam around and go back, and then they create all this thing. So that is also another good thing. The uh, policy of the government of India now for the last 4 5 years to to reach out to the people rather than just do hydropower cooperation and big projects like building Supreme Court building and some big project we used to do, which people were not aware of. But this high impact community development programs, which brings about in the thousands, about I think 800 or 900 programs are on currently, and part of the planned aid, part of the same 4,500 crores, and which will be enhanced now, and also lots of seats in our education institutions. And these education institutions are very important because they build long-term relationships, and they
Definitely.
keep coming back, and we should support them in these ways. So India is doing. Can we do more? Well, the ongoing dialogue is there, and there is a very good system of dialogue there with the at the MEA level, and we have very intimate, close relations with them. We can walk into any of their offices anytime. That's the greatest difference between Bhutan and any other country. I'm sure we're doing well, sir.
Okay, I think we'll call it off on this note, Jal. Thank you so much. I would say a very deep insight into Bhutan. Thank you so much for having spared your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee.
And thank you, viewers. Thanks for tuning in to BharatShakti.in. Please tune in like this now and then. and you will find discussions of various subjects which will definitely interest you. Thank you.